Hello, everybody, and welcome back to more political chatter. And this is a very special video as this is election eve at the time of this recording. And this is my final U.S. governor's prediction. This is it. I just did my final Senate prediction where I think that Republicans will win 51 seats in the Senate and the Democrats will win 49, that Republicans will have control of the Senate this November. But now we will talk about the governor races this year. Wow. We've talked about these races for so long. Important races like, I don't know, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Arizona, whatever the state may be. We have talked about it for so long, and now it will happen tomorrow. Voters will cast their ballots tomorrow. It is so exciting. And let's get right into it. So, of course, my predictions, Biden is underwater, just reviewing stuff. Economy is up. Trump still has an unfavorable opinion across the country. Trump has endorsed many of these candidates. But anyway, let's get right to it. So, as you know, let's start off with our safe Democratic states. I think that Josh Green, the lieutenant governor of Hawaii, will win his first term, no problem. I think that Gavin Newsom, he survived a recall in 2021 by a wide margin, safe margin. I think that he'll be able to win a second term by definitely a safe margin. No doubts in my mind there. None over here. Let's actually move all the way over to Illinois. I think that J.B. Pritzker will win a second term by a safe margin. Larry Hogan cannot run for a fourth term in the state of Maryland. Very popular governor. I think that Wes Moore will definitely be able to win his first term as Maryland's governor by a safe margin. In Massachusetts, Democrats will flip the seat also like Maryland. We have a Republican governor here, Charlie Baker, extremely popular, I see. And he decided to step down this year. Democrats will certainly pick up this seat. I see Maura Healey, the Democrat, becoming the next governor of Massachusetts by a very wide margin. And shockingly, that's it. There are only 4 safe Democratic states, while there are so many in the Senate. And, I'm sorry, there was one. No, I'm not. But anyway, this is it. Just these 4. That's pretty astonishing, really, that there are only 4 safe states. As you can see, much less partisan when it comes to the Senate election, or much less partisan when it comes to the gubernatorial elections than the Senate elections. Now let's get into some safe Republican states. Brad Little will win a second term in Idaho. Mark Gordon will win another term in Wyoming. Kristi Noem in South Dakota. Jim Pillon will win his first term in Nebraska. In Oklahoma, I think that Kevin Stitt will win by a safe margin. Polls have showed Joy Hoffmeister has a shot, but I don't see it. I see a safe margin for Kevin Stitt in Oklahoma. That might be a hot take. And these are all 15%. These are all 15% or more margins. And then we have Arkansas. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, daughter of Mike Huckabee, will win her first term. Tennessee, we have Bill Lee will win a second term. We have Kay Ivey in the state of Alabama. We have Phil Scott in the state of Vermont. The second most popular governor in America. Chris Sununu in the state of New Hampshire. Kim Reynolds in the state of Iowa, and finally Mike DeWine in the state of Oregon. So a lot of safe Republican states, not a lot of safe Democratic states. Only 4 safe Democrat, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 safe Republican, 3 times as many as the Democrats. So now let's get into some likely states. Let's start with the Democrats. Colorado is definitely one that will be very close to being safe. I'm changing my characterization last minute from safe to likely. I think that Jared Polis will win by around 13 or 14%. Very popular governor, but looking at the Senate election, there will be a lot of split ticketing regardless. However, some of these people will be like, I'm voting for the Democrats on the governor level, and, I might just as well vote for the Democrats on the Senate side too. That's called voting down ballot. The same party. Ticket splitting would be, say, voting for, and this will happen a lot this year, but ticket splitting would be voting for the Jared Polis on the gubernatorial, but Joe O'Dea, the Republican, on the Senate side. But anyway, regardless, I think that Jared Polis will win another term. Not much of a surprise there. Let's move on. Going to New York. This is one that Lee Zeldin, the Republican, has a miraculous shot at actually winning this race. I think that Kathy Hochul will win this race by 9%. And that does mean that Lee Zeldin does have some sort of shot at somehow pulling out an upset. But Lee Zeldin has proved to be a phenomenal candidate in these recent weeks. He was not regarded as anything special, but in these recent weeks, he has gained so much popularity across the country from Republicans across the country. DeSantis was just campaigning for him a week or so ago. Very popular in the state of New York, much more popular than Kathy Hochul, but New York is a safe blue state. It went to Biden by, 22% or something in 2020. It went to Biden by a very large margin. So it would take a lot of independent and bipartisan voters for Lee Zeldin to win, saying that, a lot of people would have had to vote for Biden in 2020, and now the Republicans Lee Zeldin in 2022. Therefore, I do think that Kathy Hochul will hang on. Then there's Connecticut. I think that Ned Lamont will win by around 6 to 7%. 2018 might have been a blue wave year across the country, but it was only close. It went to Lamont by 3%. It was only close because the incumbent Democrat, Dan Malloy, who wasn't running again, was so unpopular. He was so unpopular that Lamont gave him an F on state TV during the debate. He gave him an F. That's how much that Connecticuters agreed Dan Malloy was. So without that anti-Malloy sentiment, Lamont is popular, and that's why I believe that he will win again. Plus went to Biden by 20. Dan McKee will win in the state of Rhode Island by a likely margin. Not much of a surprise here. Just that he is one of the most unpopular governors in America, but Rhode Island is just so Democratic. Not really a strong Republican. Bob Stefanowski in Connecticut is a very strong Republican, more moderate than others. But the Republican in Rhode Island, not notable at all. I don't even know their name. I believe it's a woman, though. Let's move on. That's it, actually, for our likely Democratic states. I'm going to change one. I'm going to put Pennsylvania. I'm going to change my characterization from lean Democrat to likely Democrat. I am now confident that Josh Shapiro will win by 5%. It's not going to be anything crazy like 10 to 15%. I believe that he will win by just about 5%. Doug Mastriano is just such a horrible candidate. And Josh Shapiro, if you saw that rally, he is going on a bus tour across the state. You should see this turnout. It seems like every Pennsylvanian has met Josh Shapiro now. He has campaigned across the state. And these turnouts are gigantic. He is turning out such huge crowds, and he's getting Obama, Biden to come out and campaign for him. He is running a great campaign. Doug Mastriano, on the other hand, very sad campaign. Very small little rallies at town halls or whatever. Still denying an election. Too far right for Pennsylvania voters. Way too far right for a Biden state. He has to remember that he is campaigning in a Biden state. And he's saying all this crazy radical stuff. And now that's it for likely Democratic states. Now on to likely Republican states. Now one in the state of Alaska, which I believe in my last prediction I had it likely Republican. But there was an independent in the race, Bill Walker, who's a former Republican governor. He's definitely narrowing things up for Mike Dunleavy, the incumbent Republican. But at the end of the day, I think that Mike Dunleavy will hang on by around 6 to 7%. I don't think this one will be all too close. And then there's Texas. I think that Greg Abbott will win by 8 to 9%. Beto O'Rourke is just really well known in Texas. I really don't see this being a safe margin at all, but I really don't see Beto having a shot either. 2018 was his year. It had to be a year where there was an extremely unpopular Republican in office. That being 2018. Donald Trump was just so unpopular. Not the same kind of blue wave year feel as there was in 2018. I think that Beto O'Rourke doesn't have much of a shot, and that Greg Abbott, although he is pretty unpopular, I see him being able to hold on to his seat. Then there's Florida. I think that Ron DeSantis will win by just about the same margin as Rubio. A lot of voting down ballot in Florida. I think that he'll win by 8 to 9%. Very popular governor. I mean, Charlie Crist, the Democrat, is just a horrible candidate. DeSantis crushed him in the debates. I don't think I need to talk about this race too much. Republicans love DeSantis. They are pumping. They have so much money. They are pumping money into this race. They just have so much money in this race. And then there's Henry McMaster in South Carolina, which will be very close to being safe. Don't get me wrong. It'll be a 14% margin. But Joe Cunningham, the Democrat, is young. He's getting a lot of donations from people outside South Carolina. People really like the guy. But I don't need to talk about this race too much, I'm sure. You guys know. Joe Cunningham isn't, becoming the next governor of South Carolina. Don't get me wrong. And then there's Georgia. I'm standing by my prediction that Brian Kemp, and these are my final predictions, by the way. I think that this is how it will play out. Wow, it's crazy to think that this is it. But in Georgia, I think that Brian Kemp will hang on to a seat. Stacey Abrams, like Beto, it's very similar to Texas. Abrams doesn't have that same type of support as she did in 2018 when Trump was president. And besides, Brian Kemp is popular. Greg Abbott might not be popular in Texas, but Brian Kemp is a very popular governor. He won't have a hard time winning re-election. So, with that, Republicans have 25 gubernatorial seats, Democrats have 16. Now let's get into some lean Democratic states. Number one, I'm keeping New Mexico lean Democrat. The Republican Mark Ronchetti is a phenomenal candidate electorally. He is just a great moderate candidate, comes across as definitely an acceptable guy, has called out the Democrat Michelle Lujan Grisham, who's the incumbent running for a second term. He has called her out on many things like crime. He's running a campaign against crime, all this stuff. He crushed her in the debates, but then again, New Mexico is a Democratic state. Went to Biden by 10% in 9% in 2020. So it would be very tough for Mark Ronchetti to shift the state that far to the right. But it's totally possible. But I have Michelle Lujan Grisham winning by 3% at this point. Moving on to the state of Michigan. For the first time, I think, and maybe not ever, but definitely since June of this year, I think that Michigan will be closer than Pennsylvania. I rarely ever thought this, but with Tudor Dixon actually running a good campaign now, I think that she will be able to win or to have a shot. But Gretchen Whitmer, still a great candidate, or still unapproved of governor. She is popular. But Tudor Dixon is a very strong candidate electorally, and she has proven to be such. Even with her such strong positions on abortion, shockingly, she has proved herself as a good candidate. If she somehow wins this race, she would, we're looking at presidential levels. But after her term as governor. But at this point, I really don't see her winning. I think that Gretchen Whitmer will hold on to her seat kind of quite handily. Minnesota will be decently close to being likely. Tim Walz will win by 4% over Scott Jensen. Very boring race. Two very boring guys. I hate talking about this race. It makes me sad. Tim Walz, Democrat, incumbent. Minnesota went to Biden by 8. It's not going to shift 9 points to Scott Jensen, who's, also boring too. So, I don't know. I think that, Minnesota will be lean Democrat. I don't feel like I need to talk about that too much. Then there are lean Republicans. Oh, one more lean Democrat state. State of Maine. I think we'll go to Janet Mills by a lean margin. Very boring race here also. 2018. It's a 2018 rematch. LePage versus Mills. LePage, the Republican, isn't all that great of a candidate. Kind of boring guy. I don't know what to say about this race, guys. I mean, I hope we all agree that Janet Mills will win. Now, let's move on to lean Republican states. Wisconsin, I'm pretty confident that Tim Michels will oust Tony Evers as governor of Wisconsin. I think that Democrats will lose the seat and that Republicans will pick it up. Tim Michels is a pretty okay candidate. I mean, he will. What's great about him is that he will win the white working class. That is how you win in the Rust Belt. He will win the white working class voters, and he will therefore win this election in Wisconsin. Biden was able to win them because here's the thing: Tim Michels is a businessman. What do we know about white working class voters? They care about the economy. Biden won them in 2020 because he called Trump out on the economy in Wisconsin. He said, you handled COVID horribly. The economy is failing under you. White working class voters care less about social issues and more about economic issues. Tim Michels is a businessman talking about inflation, how to reduce it, talking about the economy. He's a great candidate for the white working class in Wisconsin, and I see him winning the election. Moving on to Arizona, I think that Kari Lake will win by a lean margin. I'm changing my prediction from tilt to lean. This is yet another characterization change. Kari Lake, it's just how bad Katie Hobbs is. She was seen as a good candidate in the beginning, but she is just such a horrible candidate. It is insane how horrible she really is. She could be debating Kari Lake right now, saying, "Oh, you denied an election. You are going to do nothing about inflation. You don't have real plans. You are not bipartisan. You are super partisan. You won't get anything done for the moderates of Arizona. You won't serve Arizona." But no, instead, she decides to refuse to debate. Kari Lake says she's scared. Obviously, of course Kari Lake is going to say that. Anyone is going to say that if, your opponent refuses to debate. That was the worst thing she could have done. Why did Katie Hobbs do that? That was just such a dumb move. Maybe she doesn't want to be governor, but she doesn't know how to tell that to people. But anyway, I'm pretty confident that Kari Lake will win. I think that most people agree with that. Arizona has a Republican governor, Doug Ducey. Karen Taylor Robson, Kari Lake's primary opponent, might have been a better candidate, but I think, but Kari Lake will win because of the horrible campaign won by Katie Hobbs. And then our last lean state is Nevada. I think that Joe Lombardo will win this race. He's a good candidate, okay? Don't get me wrong. Joe Lombardo is a good candidate. Steve Cieslak is too associated with Joe Biden. Nevadans won't want a Democrat, an establishment Democrat as their governor again. 2018 was a different year because it was a blue wave year, but 2022, voters care about pocketbook issues, the economy, all that stuff, and most Nevadans disapprove of Joe Biden. We have to remember that. Steve Cieslak, too aligned with Biden. Joe Lombardo, too good of a candidate for Cieslak to win. He's a very solid candidate, Joe Lombardo. And I think that he will definitely be able to appeal to the suburbs of Las Vegas, which, the population of those suburbs are growing by the month, by the week, by the day, whatever, by the hour. No, they're not going by the hour. But because of that, I think that Joe Lombardo will definitely be able to win the Nevada gubernatorial election. And we just have two states, Oregon and Kansas, both of which I think will be tilt, meaning that they will be decided by less than 1%. I believe that one will go to the Democrats and one will go to the Republicans. And I'm changing my prediction of Kansas from tilt Republican to tilt Democrat. I think that Laura Kelly will win by just 0.3% to 0.5%. Very narrow win in Kansas. I think that this could be the closest state of 2022. Like literally all the Senate or governor races, like all the state races. I think that this could potentially be the closest. Derek Schmidt is a good candidate, okay? He's like Joe Lombardo in Nevada. He could turn out the Trump voters, all Republicans, if he tries hard enough. But Laura Kelly has continued to defy expectations, especially on polls. I know polls do favor Democrats most of the time, but she is shockingly leading in polls. 538 has her with a higher chance of winning, but she's just running a downright good campaign. Saying that she's a bipartisan. What do we know? As I just said so many times, people like bipartisan senators. She is running a very successful campaign, and I think that she will continue to be successful, and I think that she's one of the most popular governors in America, by the way. We have to remember that. She is one of the most popular Democratic governors, not just voter governors, overall plain, But one of the most popular Democratic voters, people like her. They want to vote for a bipartisan. Some people are really into splitting their ticket, like they want to say, I split my ticket. But I think that she'll be able to pull out a win. And finally, Oregon, I think we'll go to Christine Drazan. I've talked about this race a lot. I'm sure you guys know. Tina Kotek, or Kate Brown, the incumbent Democrat governor who is retiring this year. Not a good candidate. Not a popular governor. She is very, very, very unpopular, and this is really weighing down the Democrats because Tina Kotek is heavily associated with Kate Brown, seen as very much an establishment Democrat, too associated with the establishment Democratic Party and Biden in Washington, in D.C. And Christine Drazan is running a phenomenal campaign, similar to Tiffany Smiley in the Washington Senate race, but just a great candidate overall. Christine Drazan and former Democrat Betsy Johnson is in the race. We have to remember about Johnson. She is the independent, stealing a lot of votes away from Kotek, which will result in a Christine Drazan victory. So this is my final gubernatorial prediction. I have Oregon red, Nevada red, Arizona red, Kansas blue, Minnesota blue, New Mexico blue, Wisconsin red, Michigan blue, Pennsylvania blue, Maine blue. So this is it. Election day is tomorrow. It's election eve today, and this is my final prediction. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all tomorrow.